Coming up on this episode of In Your Mind.
You know, we don't talk about mental health as a society, and we definitely don't talk about it in families, right? And so I think for me and for a lot of folks, not just queer folks, you don't even know what you're feeling until you can read it in a book or go to a therapist or have someone, you know, a friend that's like, oh no, you're depressed, or you have anxiety. Like, that's what that is. So I think it could be challenging for all of us to figure that out.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of In Your Mind with your host, me, Paul Trudell Payne. And I am so excited to bring you another twosome, which rarely happens, but we're doing it so close. But I'm honestly, it's totally worth it. I want you guys to help me welcome Jay and Rob. How are you guys?
Good.
That's Rob in the purple.
Doing great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, there we go. There's Jay in the white. All right. Well, you guys, I'm stoked, honestly, to have you here and sort of dive in. I've changed things up a little bit, so I'm going to start with this versus my normal first question, which is...
no prep at all.
Yeah, right? Like, well, what I was doing before is I do like, hey, here's so-and-so, and here's what they do. And then I noticed every single person was like, hey, my job is so much more complicated than that. And so I was like, cool, I'm gonna let you guys. So you tell us a little bit about, honestly, I guess each one of you, maybe a little bit about what you do, and then how we got you together.
Jay can go first.
Oh, thank you.
He's younger.
So my name is Jay. For work, I do fundraising and PR for a charity here in the Hudson Valley in New York. And we work with people who are low income and have chronic illnesses like HIV and AIDS. We grew out of an HIV/AIDS organization and became a lot bigger and doing a lot of other stuff. And I've been there almost my entire career. But for fun outside of that, I have a husband and two kids, and we have a house, and I spend my time gardening. We both love to garden, my husband and I, baking, cooking, taking care of the kids, and doing some home stuff. And I had a podcast before because I was really into podcasts and wanted to do my own. Then I was, that didn't go so well. I did a few episodes and then kind of flopped, and I was like, all right, but I learned from it. And then I was talking with my good friend Rob one day, and we both revealed that we had a long-standing love with Better Homes and Gardens magazine, and that we read it as kids when we were little gay boys. And we're dreaming of future homes and what we would do if we had the money and the time and the space to do stuff. And so we continued to bond over that. And then Rob said that he had a huge collection of back issues because he'd been subscribing since he was 10. And my experience growing up was, I grew up in a family that did not have a lot of money, but my mom was very, very crafty. And she was actually an artist, and that's what she did for a living. So she would buy those home decor and shelter magazines, as we now call them, at holiday time. So we would get like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas issues. So they were a magazine always meant to me like special holiday family time. But I shared that with Rob, and then he got me a subscription for an entire year. And then I think one night, probably when we were drunk, said,
Probably.
wouldn't it be funny if we like got drunk and went through and reviewed the magazine together, and we could tape it and make a podcast out of it? And eventually we wound up doing that, and
That's
it
awesome.
kind of took off. It's a small little show, but
With big impact.
huge impact. And we have a lot of fun doing it. So it's purely for fun. We don't make any money doing it. It's a labor of love. And we just do it because it's fun. It's a good excuse to get together, even virtually through Zoom lately, to tape our episodes. And we've gotten into a rhythm where we now know each other so much more, that we know what each other's gonna like and dislike. You know, we don't really pull any punches. We're very honest. And we've tagged some of the magazine employees on our Instagram feed. And so now, like, they listen.
That's awesome.
And we pretend that we have great influence and
Mm-hmm.
take credit for things that are happening in the magazine. But it all comes from a place of love. It's humorous. Not that we're comedians by far, but we try to make it as entertaining as possible.
Yeah.
And it really does come from a place of love and admiration, even though sometimes it doesn't sound like it.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Quick question before we even jump, Rob, or Jay, sorry. How old are your kids?
I have a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Ugh, gosh. Are they boys or girls?
2 boys.
Ugh, 3's the worst.
Cute. Super cute.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, 3. I have a 3-year-old and he is amazing. So.
Yeah. And the
worst. Yeah. We're at the let's bring live animals into the house phase.
Oh, yeah.
Worms, bugs, they're all coming in. I'm like, no.
See, that's because you have to train them when that, like, I've trained them since the beginning, like how horrible animals. Well, not animals, but so
bugs.
Yeah. But no, okay. Okay, Rob, your turn.
So all right, so my day job, as I like to call it, for the last 21 years, I work for the New York State Unified Court System, actually. I'm doing something completely unique, which is I oversee a statewide network of 29 drop-in childcare centers and family courts. So New York State is the only state in the country that provides free drop-in childcare for litigants going through divorce or foster care, and cases of that nature. So I oversee that program for the state of New York, and we see about 45,000 children a year. So that's what I do in my day job. I met Jay actually through my volunteer gig.
I thought you were going to say through the court system because you had to take care of this guy.
No. We actually met at a Pride event because he was there for his job and I was there for my volunteer organization, because I volunteer for GLSEN, which works with K through 12 schools to create safe environments for LGBTQ students and educators. So we met there. So we've been friends for probably 12, 15 years, a long time.
I think it's 12. I think.
12? Yeah. So my family looks a little different than Jay's. I don't have any children, but I do have 2 partners. So I am in a tri-relationship for the last 14 years. So that's been a unique journey, a whole other podcast.
I couldn't even imagine that 4 or 13 years ago. You know what I mean? Like now it just is like, that's like today. Yeah. But yeah, I could not imagine that. Wow.
Yeah. So, and like Jay said, we'd been friends for a while before we started the podcast. And quite honestly, when he started his first podcast, it's the only thing I'd never listened to a podcast before. So when he was like, when he came to me and he said, well, let's take this, Better Homes and Gardens idea. I think it was more of a, hey, let's merge like remember Drunk History on YouTube?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that. Like, let's sort of merge this and make it fun, a little bit serious, a little bit fun, which is what we did. And I think, like he said, we were fortunate that we were already really good friends and knew each other pretty well, but we definitely developed rapport on the podcast that I think as you listen, it's pretty obvious that we like set each other up for the joke.
Yeah.
And we know when it's coming at this point. And we do have an adult warning for your listeners who might want to put it on when their 3-year-old is. We basically come at it from the perspective of 2 gay men. So we do talk, we are very sex positive. So we discuss sexual things. But we also try to look at the magazine through like a cultural perspective, right? And as 2 gay men who grew up probably feeling different, definitely feeling different and outside of normal culture, we also try to look at the magazine a little bit critically in like, what are we selling to the world as in terms of home and garden concepts? Is it all white people? Are there families of color? So we do discuss those sort of topics as well, which isn't necessarily what you get from your regular home and garden podcast. So
yeah. Well, guys, I'm so excited because this is going to be a fun episode. I can already tell. So now is the time that we do get to start with that big first question. That wasn't even a question. That was just saying who you were. So because Jay started, we're going to start with Rob on this one. And I would love to know about you as a child.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I think so for sure now.
So as a child, I was, I'm the first of 2 siblings. And so I have that definite like first child's follow the rules concept about me. But I was from very early on, I sort of describe it as I just knew things. I knew things that adults didn't know. And so I was always very sort of even outside of my own family, right? I was very, introspective and into relationships and sort of analyzing things. I mean, I figured out that there was no Santa Claus at the age of 4. And, figured out all these family dynamics in my family as a child. And I would approach my mother and I'd say, oh, is Aunt and Uncle so-and-so going to get a divorce because they're not getting along very well? And she'd be like, how the hell do you know that? Right. So I was always that kid. And I was always the kid in the family that made the adults uncomfortable because I was not afraid of talking about some of the things that we talk about in the magazine, like cultural issues and racial issues. And, if someone in my family used a racial slur, at 10, I would confront them and say, like, where did that come from? And if I didn't know the answer of the history of it, I would go and I'd research it. And the next time we'd have Thanksgiving, I'd sit them down and say, well, that term you used actually goes back to this. And so I was always a little bit much for my family. And so they didn't understand that part of me. And then I was always very emotional, right? I was always, what a lot of people tag today as empath, right? If you felt something, then I felt it. And then the other big part of my childhood would be that I was a brother, right? And so as the years went on, we discovered that both my brother and I are gay. And we shared a room all of our childhood. And for that whole period of our lives, we have talked since then about laying in bed, thinking to ourselves, I'm different And I don't know why I'm different, but I also know like Chuck's different. And he would sit in bed going, I'm different. I don't know why I'm different, but I also know Rob's different. And like it wasn't until like our late teens, early 20s that we're like, oh, that difference we sensed in each other was that we're both gay. And so it was, and that led to a unique experience in that my relationship with my brother, most people to this day think that we're twins, because we sort of like act. I mean, if you listen to my podcast with Jay and you listen to a conversation with my brother on the phone, we have the same exact speech pattern. We laugh the same way. We tell the jokes in the same way. We have the same mannerisms. You know, I'm much cuter than he is, but no, but so I had a really unique experience in that I was that sense that a lot of young queer kids have about being different and not being able to like radar check it in the world. There was this radar check for me in my own bedroom. I just didn't even know what it was at that point.
Did you guys, because that is, you're right, like I've heard of siblings, right? Like, we're both gay. Nothing like you though, where you're like in the same room, you both are going through the same thing. Did you, I'm sure later when you talked about it and came out, like, did you feel like you both did go through the same type of, no, not at all?
No,
okay.
no. I mean, in terms of our understanding our sexual orientation was very different.
Okay.
You know, my brother understood that he was gay before kindergarten. Like he never had a crush on any person but a boy. His first crush in kindergarten was on a boy. I didn't figure it out until I was about 13 and I was watching Who's the Boss. Your younger listeners are not going to get this at all. So I'm watching Who's the Boss one night and I'm sitting there going, boy, I feel like I'm supposed to like Alyssa Milano, but god damn, Tony Danza's hot. Right? And so, like this whole, like I remember watching the episode, sitting there going blah, 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 in my head, and I'm like, oh, that's why I have these like wacky feelings in my stomach when I see so and so in the gym, or you know, that's why. So we had very different experiences in terms of understanding it within ourselves, and then he came out before I did, even though he's younger than I am.
Oh my god.
And I was the worst brother ever.
I
I told him to not come out. I told him he shouldn't. I told him it would embarrass him and me because I wasn't ready, right? And so it was like probably the worst conversation in my entire life. And anybody who knows me now, I'm not that person. I'm like let's do it, right? Like, let's figure it out. I'll support you. Like, let's tell everybody that you're trans. Let's figure out, you know, whatever it is. But at that point in time, I was like, oh, shut up, because you're going to out me too. And I wasn't ready. Yeah. So that was a tough, you know, it was a tough period. But
how did your family deal with both of their kids being gay?
Well, my parents were divorced by that point.
Okay.
And my father would not have dealt with it at all, for sure.
Okay.
My father was one of these wonderful people that thought all the black people and gays should be sent to an island.
Okay.
So that would have been a fun conversation. And my mom's a super awesome, crazy woman. You know, I came out to her when she told me about my brother, which I already knew. So she said to me, you know, how do you feel about your brother being gay? And I said, I'm totally fine with it. And she was actually driving at the time, because a lot of parents do. They're like, well, for driving, we can have this conversation, right? And so she said, you know, oh, you're okay with it? Why are you okay with it? And I said something ridiculous like, well, I'm the same. And she's like, well, what do you mean you're the same? And I said, well, I'm gay too. And my mother like slammed on the brakes in the middle of driving and goes, and this is typically my mother, which is why I have the mouth I do. She said, what the fuck? Both of you? And I was like, yeah, both of us. And she's like, why the fuck didn't you tell me? Blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God.
And then like literally probably within the next day, she was pointing out hot guys to me and my brother. You know,
Oh,
she's
wow,
like,
okay.
oh, he's hot. What do you think? You know? And the rest of my family, I have a big Italian family. And the rest of my family didn't really have much to say about it, which is, I think, a way a lot of families do it. They have accepted it, but they've never celebrated.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Jay, you're up.
All right. My childhood, gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm also the oldest brother. I have two younger brothers. And excuse me, I grew up in a little town in upstate New York. Very little town. It was population 3,000, so it was a very, very tight-knit little community.
Yeah.
And I was incredibly shy. I was overweight. I was a bookworm. I was really good in school, and that was my thing. Just being at the top of the class. So I loved school. I loved doing homework, all that stuff. Terrible at sports. But being in a little town up in New York, sports are where it's at. So I felt a little bit left out when everyone else was getting together for soccer matches and football games and all that stuff. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in my room alone reading, or out reading a book under a tree in the summer. So reading and literature was my escape, just getting away from everything. So like I said, my mom was an artist, and my dad was a mechanic. So very hands-on people. But we grew up very, very, very poor, but we didn't know it. At least as kids, we didn't know it. So my parents always made sure that we had everything, and we didn't know that we were poor. But in retrospect, they were scrimping and saving to make it all happen. Yeah, growing up with a mom who's an artist, she always encouraged her kids to follow their passions, be different, and to revel in who they were. And no matter what that looked like, she was always super supportive. I mean, my dad and I have come around. We have a okay relationship now. I came out to my family in my teens. So they were, my mom, my brothers were supportive. My dad was not, but he eventually came around, and everything is okay on that front now. Yeah, it was just kind of like more, my struggle was more about like being a small town boy and being gay in that environment. But I also had a lot of gay friends. We used to joke there was something in the water, because there were like a gang of like 15 of us in high school that were gay, and we all had lunch
in that small town. Wow.
In that small town, yeah. So I don't know what it was. We just felt comfortable being out at that young age, and we just all kind of hung out and made it work and supported each other until we went off to college. And that was my saving grace. I thought all I have to do is survive school and survive high school until I can go to college, and then life will really begin. I don't know how I knew that, but it turned out to be totally true. Once I got out of that little town, which granted, it's a wonderful, picturesque place to visit, but it was hell growing up there. I just knew if I can just get out of here, everything will be fine. And just like the campaign, It Gets Better, it really did get better. Really, like 1,000%.
I guess I have a question, because I've said this, or I've actually talked about this specific thing of like, once I got out of high school, and it will be okay, or we'll be good after that. And I'm happy because like you are saying that happened, like that worked, right? Like that happened for you. Why do you think that? I mean, I have guesses as to why I think that would work, right? Because I do think that's amazing that you lived in such a small town and there was more than one like gay in the village, right? Like there's like, that's amazing. So like, but I think like, cause I've heard that so much, and in my story, it was different in the sense of like, that's where I thought it would happen, and then it didn't. So how do you think, or what do you think happened that made that work for you? Like, cause is it that you went away, or that you had gay role models in a sense already?
I think that was a part of it. I mean, I did have some friends who that were older that went off to college, and I saw how they were able to be out, be comfortable, to have everyone know who's important to them.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and just even not having to keep the secret anymore. So I think that was part of it, and I also, just being a big reader, I just knew that there were other lives, everything was possible. You could lead a different life, either in college, or that there were other environments that you could be a part of that were not this small little town with very limited viewpoints. So I think both having some older friends who went off and just did what I wanted to do, and just being a reader and being able to envision what life would be like. And I was always very, very independent. My parents would say that from the minute I turned 4, they didn't need to parent me anymore. I just kind of raised myself. So it was kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, once I kind of can break free of this environment, I know I'll be fine. Just let me call my own shots. And once I did, everything started to get a lot better, and I got a lot happier.
That's awesome. You guys, you both, when we first even connected today, and you guys were sort of talking about what you do. Immediately I thought like, yeah, that's like exactly what I thought I'd be like. I'd be a gay guy as an adult, which I am now, obviously, but like, I'm going to be this adult, and that's what I'm going to do. It's like being part of the community, giving back, right? Like these, because you guys have made a career, whether it was directly or indirectly, where you are doing these things, right? And you are helping the community.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, that's amazing. Secondly, I guess, how did you decide, like, I'm going to own that? Because I think that's a hard thing to own. It's one thing to be like, I'm out and I'm going to live the way I need to live. It's another thing to own, be like, I'm going to be a presence in this community, right? And make an impact. That's a whole other type of person. You like that one? Yeah.
so I'll try and field that one. I probably had a different experience than the two of you have just described. I actually had a quintessential high school experience. Looked like the Breakfast Club. I also had a very diverse high school experience. I used to say that my friends were like the United Nations. I grew up in a small city here in the Hudson Valley, but it was, not that far out of New York City. So there were lots of people that had even, in the 70s when I was growing up, they had already transplanted upstate. So, I mean, I had friends of all races and ethnicities and religions, and I didn't have the sense that it was going to get better after high school, because my high school friendships were really great. And they're actually still my best friends today. I'm still one of those people that I have 40 years of friendship with a lot of my friends. And I actually, college and right after college is where I sort of lost my power, right? I went through everything that every gay and queer kid goes through in school. I was bullied and picked on. But like I talked about as a child, I went through that experience with a real sense of my own self-power, Like I always knew, like, you're picking on me because you're ignorant. Like, like, not because it's me, right? Like, there's actually nothing wrong with me, and someday you're going to realize there's nothing wrong with me. I always had that sense that it wasn't me, it was their lack of understanding of the world. And even though I had rarely left small town Kingston, New York, I always had this instinct that the world was bigger than me and bigger than those experiences. And then I went to college in New York City at NYU and became like anonymous, right? Yeah. Like I just like disappeared after having felt this sort of sense of like having assessed the world and been like, oh, like it, you know, it's a melting pot, it's a mosaic, everybody has a place and a space and then I went to a city of like millions of people where nobody really has a place or a space, or like it's just like everyone's there. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in my first years in college feeling very lonely in the biggest city on earth, right? Or one of the biggest cities. And so I sort of like lost that. I was kind of like, where is who I thought I was? And I had always had this sense within myself that I was never going to be some big, movie star or famous writer or, anything that was going to be big, that my impact was really sort of like in smaller environments where I could have those intimate conversations and have an impact that would make a bigger ripple, right? So yeah. I moved out of the city after 10 years and met my first partner. And that's where I started to find it again. Like, oh, this is, the Hudson Valley, these communities, this is where I can make a difference because I'm not as anonymous. And I kind of like attention. So, but I also like, it was just one of those things that I instinctually knew that my impact was not global. My impact was local. I just always knew that. And so I like refound that after I met my partner, Tim, and we sort of settled down and became a part of the community.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. I love that a lot. So for both of you, I guess, I know this is a very gay themed show today, which I did not plan, but I like it. I like this conversation because I think that it's so amazing to hear people's different experiences, right? And because they are pretty different. When and I'll explain to you what the reason I asked that question in particular. It's been happening a lot with me lately with people that I've been meeting and even just close friends now that I've made. This experience of like, I came out and then what happens, right? Because I think I don't know if you've seen, there's a movie called Love, Simon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you seen? Yeah, okay. And they just came out with that TV show called like Love, Victor. So like I just, binge watched that. And I kept thinking like, oh, I love all those shows, but it's still that issue of like what happens, because there's always this like I come out and then there's either a party, or I come out and there's like all my friends, or I come out and then I'm abandoned and now I like do this thing, which is amazing. And sometimes it's just like sort of nothing, right? Like none of that. It's just sort of normal. I came out and I'm the same person as the person that didn't come out. And obviously that's not a fun story, so I'm not expecting that to be on TV. But I do think that it's like one of those things where I want people to share it and explain it. And with mine, it wasn't not boring. It just wasn't as dramatic as it could have been, right? High school, I started in public school. I'm the third of 4 boys. And where we grew up, it was a small, small little farm workers town in Washington. So like everyone, I'd say like, I think it's like 80% is Hispanic, and the rest realistically were just like white. and so like, I mean, I always joke, but like our Dairy Queen served burritos, you know, like it was a very like Hispanic population. And so like everything's usually in Spanish and English, and that's what I grew up learning, Spanish and then English. And it was awesome. Like I love that. I always think back when I think of like me as a child, it's never high school. It's always like really young in that community, because it was so tight. I don't know how else to explain it. Like everyone just knew each other and they took care of each other. Then in high school, my parents had transferred me to public or private school after my two older brothers. I'm sure they love that I share their stories, but they had just gotten into some bad things. One got into a gang, and the other one was, you know, not doing things and had to go to rehab. And so my parents were like, you have to literally go away and go to school so that you don't end up this way. And so I had to take like this van, this like, I don't even know what they're called. It's like, I see people that do ski trips, those little vans that fit like 10. Me and like 6 other Mexican kids get piled into this van, and then we get shipped off to our big city, which was Yakima, Washington. And we go to this private school, and I had found out within like the first month that like all those kids, they actually thought they were the scholarship kids, because you could apply to get a scholarship to go to this school. And so although all the kids there that didn't ride the bus all said, oh, that's a scholarship bus. And like, I wish, believe me, I do wish I had got a scholarship. We didn't, but it's fine that happened. And so like right from the get-go, it was like, you're going to be different. And you got stood out. Like it was literally, I think the only six or seven of us that were not a white kid in that school. I feel like, I always say like, I know I'm privileged because I am mixed. Like my dad's white, my mom's Mexican. And so it's really easy for me to say one or the other. Where some people, they can't, because right, their skin's a lot darker than mine is. And in that school, I didn't have that, because they already knew like, if you didn't live here, you are the Mexican kids. So it wasn't bad as far as like being gay. I don't feel like, you know, in school, I, like both of you, I think sort of alluded to, like, I knew I was different right away, but I always blamed it on anxiety. I had high anxiety as a kid. And I mean, from I think 5 on, I don't remember, through high school, from 5, it would be a rare week if I did not like throw up that day. I got sick every day when I was a child. And it was not because something bad was happening. I know it was like me, it was just the anxiety just would make me. So I was hyper aware and hypersensitive, anxious, and gay, which I don't know. And then you're in the school and you're singled out. There was a lot going on. But there was one gay kid I remember in that school, and he was like out and proud. He would show up in like sparkle nail polish, and we all had to wear white polos and like navy pants or shorts. And at every school dance, he'd go and request like Beyonce or Britney Spears or something, and then do a full-on routine in the middle of the, you know, like he was so awesome. Amazing at it. But I also then got to see what happened, right? He's so open, and the minute you're different, especially with children, they're gonna really like to highlight it and point it out. And so I don't remember anything physical, thank God, ever happening to him, but like it just constant like comments, right? And not being included or not being involved. And so that was my idea of like, oh, that's what it's gonna be meaning to be gay, because I didn't have any other reference. And so the day after high school, I flew to San Francisco and went to college. Like I moved immediately. Oh, and wow. Then I think I might have done the not great thing of like, here's one extreme of like nothing, and then here's an extreme of like everything. And it was not my best move for sure. But like I went to college, and I had dated girls through high school, and I thought I was going to be out when I moved to San Francisco. It was like my plan. And I got hooked up with this roommate early, because we were there early. And he just ended up being like the like quintessential, like, I don't know, like lead role in a movie. Like every girl was interested in him. Like the minute they see him, he like showed up introducing himself like on a skateboard. And he like, it was just funny. Like and every night, I swear, a new girl in that room every single night. And we were in a RA room, so it was a bigger room. So we had like put up blankets on those bunk beds, and I mean, it was like, if I were straight, that would have been an ideal situation. I would have but like, I had to go back to, I have to date girls again. There's so many, like I can't get away. And so my gay time came out only at night. I worked in retail and would take my school's right outside of San Francisco, and so I'd take the ferry into San Francisco, work a shift, and then meet on a gay app, or I think back then it was like gay.com, like anybody that you could find that was like gay, and that's my gay idea. So I love
you all
that you
missed
guys
the bookstore. The bookstores were much easier. You didn't have to do all the talking.
I'm not joking. I never even heard of a bookstore until I moved here this last year. I've never in my life heard of a bookstore.
The whole app thing, like whatever.
Yeah.
You walked into a place, you gave them your buck or by the end $5, and there it was. Come on, Jay, don't laugh. You know it was true.
I know it was true. I didn't do it, but I know it was true.
I love that, like you guys, though, you had this, like, you know, you got to first, I mean, Jay, like I never get to hear about people that are like, I just had a group of gay friends that I got to go to and be with. That's amazing, amazing. And then Rob, I think it is really rare that you're like this like gay kid with that much confidence. I just do, like, I rarely see it. Like, and you had it since you were like a toddler. So it was like you had that built into you. It like it's really,
I mean, Jay, I'll tell you that I have my vulnerable moments, right? Like where like, the world has really kicked me in the gut, and you know, I'm in the closet calling him and saying, guess what just happened? Right?
Yes, that does happen. Yes.
It does happen. We've been friends a long time. And I get down and I get depressed. I mean, I struggle with anxiety for sure. Mm-hmm. You know, as I've gotten older, I start to recognize my mother has anxiety challenges. And I didn't know what anxiety was growing up. Like you know, my big Italian family said, "Oh, don't let your nerves get to you." And I was like, "Well, what are nerves?" Like, what they were saying was, "This is an anxious moment. You're anxious. Don't get anxious." You know, anxiety. But nobody used those terms, right? So I was much older before I even understood what it was. And even, you know, I have a master's in mental health counseling, and I still didn't really understand my own anxiety issues until I was in my 30s, you know, because I was like, oh, that's why I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll think for 3 hours, right? Like, you know, or that's why, you know, I procrastinate and don't want to start something. But then once I started, I'm like, oh, of course you can do this, right? Like, but those sorts of things, I don't think we don't talk about mental health as a society, and we definitely don't talk about it in families, right? And so I think for me and for a lot of folks, not just queer folks, you don't even know what you're feeling until you can read it in a book or go to a therapist or have someone, you know, a friend that's like, oh no, you're depressed, or you have anxiety. Like, that's what that is. So I think it could be challenging for all of us to figure that out. And particularly in instances like this, right? Here we are in the middle of a pandemic. For those of us who have those challenges, you know, everyone's talking about like, oh, the mental health concerns for our society right now are huge. There really is no, like, here's how to make it work. Like, here's how to, you know, here's how not to fight with your partner. Here's how not to, you know, I have a friend who said, you know, at one point early on, you know, he didn't get out of bed for like 2 weeks, right? No one's telling you like, how do you get through that when you can't actually go to see a therapist, or you can't actually leave your house to get groceries.
Yeah, it's key. Like, they aren't talking about that. I haven't been meeting with anybody because I feel like I say house arrest, but it's not house arrest. You know, like, we're here, we're safe, being safe. But I just ran into a friend because I did have to go to the store. And he said for like the first 3 months, or not 3 months, sorry, 3 weeks, he didn't do anything because he couldn't, right? It was overwhelmed. But he started to think like, he's struggled with depression. And I knew that, but he started to think like, well, maybe this is this is how it will be, because he knew like I can't really follow through with this. I get depressed, but I'm not gonna hurt myself. I can't follow through. But maybe this is like an outside source that will finally. And I was like, that's like not a good. Like, no, we cannot think that way. Like, let's talk. Like, that's a bad way to think.
Right.
But it is true that everyone has a hashtag and everyone's like, let's talk about this month.
Right.
But then it's gone. And even in that talk, you're right. They don't tell us what to do.
Right. Right.
So I mean, I did not know that you had a master's degree in mental health. So you tell me what to do. Tell us what to do. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I'm just using that as an example that, like even formal education doesn't always give us the right words or the right things for our own lives, right? So I think, I mean,
with this. And I don't know if you guys noticed, I'm always shocked. I have nieces and nephews, and I go and like just shocked at how unique that they all want to be. When I grew up, it was very much the last thing I wanted to do was be unique. How do you, and even Jay especially, like how are you dealing with raising these kids that are very different than I'm sure how you grew up?
Well, it's interesting. For some reason, when I was a kid, I desperately wanted to be famous. Even though I was incredibly shy, I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be a famous writer. That was my big thing. And a lot of kids I knew in my grade wanted to be famous in some way. They wanted to be actors, actresses, musicians, rock stars. For some reason in that little town, it was a big thing. Like maybe to combat the fact that it was so small, the only way out was to become super famous. And so a lot of my friends had a lot of ambitions to do that.
Where is this town that just breeds like gay people and celebrity? Yeah.
It's actually Clinton, New York, and our most famous resident is the woman who's the voice of Siri.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
She is from my hometown.
Wow.
But as far as the kids go, I hope that what I'm doing is what my parents did, I think without trying, which is to encourage them to be really strong and strong-willed and to be individuals. So I know even my youngest kid who's 3, almost 4, they both have wills of iron, and they argue back like nothing else. And many times I think if they could just like say, yes, I will do it, or yes, daddy, without arguing, that would be amazing. But there are other times when I think, this is a really annoying trait right now, but in the future, I hope this will serve them well, because they do not take anyone's answer at face value. They're always fighting back. And my 9-year-old, he wants to be a YouTuber, and I keep telling him, if you want to be a successful YouTuber, because that's what every kid wants to be now. They don't want to be rockers, they want to be YouTubers. I tell him is, well, what's your angle? What's going to make you unique? You need to do your research to find out what other YouTubers are not talking about, and pick a topic that will make you unique so you can stand out and be a successful YouTuber. And then he'll say, oh, well, I want to be a YouTuber that opens toys. I'm like, no, already done. I want to be a YouTuber that talks about Minecraft. I'm like, already done. Like, it's more unique. Keep going. But I think eventually, I'm not worried about either one of them being unique.
Yeah.
They definitely will be.
Did you have both of your kids from birth?
No, they both came to us through the foster care system.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we were foster parents first, and then wound up adopting both of them. And even though Rob is also connected to the foster care system in a way, it was completely independent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be like, do you want Rob to come here? You better act right now because Rob's gonna
Well, of course.
So I want to give Jay props because Jay and his husband Bob. I have lots of friends with lots of children, and Jay and Bob are actually doing it really well, right? And I have a number of friends who I can point to and say, that's not the way to do this. Right? It's like, I don't even have children, but you could just feel it instinctually. You're like, as it's happening, you're like, that's not the way to do this. But Bob and Jay have done an amazing job. I mean, I like their kids better than I like them.
We know.
But no, they're doing an amazing job because they do. I mean, it's, the age difference alone, right? They've had to struggle with, and they've done a really great job. And they are both wonderful kids. And what I love about what they're doing is they are teaching them affection, right? What I know anytime I see any one of their boys is that the first thing I'm going to get is a hug, right? The first, they're not uncomfortable with showing affection. And I think that's something we don't do very well, right? And we don't teach children how to, they do it naturally. They teach them how to do it naturally, not like go give your aunt a kiss, right? Yeah. It's more like build a relationship with someone and connect to them. And they're doing a really amazing job at that. Come to the Hudson Valley with your kid and your husband, and we'll hang out.
I know. I will. Like, if you can teach him how to be that way, for sure. Ours is like, I mean, he is so sweet and nice, honestly. But since he was a baby, like, if he's upset, the last thing he will let you do is touch.
Oh.
Like, so like he does a lot of like, and it rarely happens, but every once in a while, I mean, he's a kid, he's crazy. So he'll fall and then he'll realize he's a little bit hurt. He usually freezes whatever position he's in. So if it's laying down, he's freezing with one leg up or however it is. And until he processes what happened. And then he gets up and goes to a space to hide. But he comes out right away. I mean, but I remember when it first happened, I was like, we did this. What did we do that we did this to him? And we didn't do anything. Like, that's just like his natural response. But yeah, I love that you said that, because it is smart that we teach kids to be affectionate. Because I have noticed, even in a group I'm in with sort of other gay parents, is they have a fear to do it. A fear just to be like, I don't know how affectionate I can get with my child because I don't want it to be perceived in any kind of way. And I've never thought that before until it was brought up in that class. But like, I don't want to be outside and be like, I'm, and someone try and do something to us or say something. And I'm like, I've never felt or thought that way. But yeah, I don't know. There's a different perspective I've never heard.
I mean, we're also in the Hudson Valley in New York, and it's very queer friendly. So I think that's a different,
sure.
I don't think people are binoculars looking at what Jay and Bob are doing with their kids.
Yeah. And so you guys, because of me, it's not your fault, it's mine. I took up all our time just blabbing and blabbing and blabbing. But I do have to ask you the final question, because I like a full circle.
Right.
So we started with how you were as a child. We roundabout way somehow came back to, and we know what you're doing. You told us in the beginning, so we got there. And what I want to know now is, if you were in front of your younger self, in front of that child today, what do you think that you'd want to share with them, or what do you think you'd want to tell them?
I would say to my younger self, all those things that you're worried about, even in 2 years from now, they're not going to matter. So whatever you're stressing about, you got your priorities all wrong. Just don't worry about that. That seems so important. Ultimately, it's not that important. So just chill out.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So I want to tie it into doing the podcast with Jay. So I think looking back on my younger self, I would say to Rob, little Robbie with a Y, not an I-E. that you never know what you're going to learn about yourself in the future. So don't think you know it all now. Because doing this podcast, this podcast with Jay and doing this for the last 2.5 years was the first time in my life I had permission to be funny and to be like irreverent. I mean, I would do it like with close friends, but this gave me the opportunity to go, oh, you know, that's actually a part of my personality that's pretty baked in. And so doing this particular podcast with someone that I trust and love, right? It was a big part of it. It really taught me like, oh, like you can be funny, even if you want to be smart, even if you want to be serious, even if you want to be all those other things, if you want to have a wonderful house and garden, you can still be funny, and that's cool too. And those are the sorts of things as a child I thought you could only be one or two things. You couldn't be multidimensional. So I'd say that.
I love that. I mean, you both are proof of like it's just better to be multidimensional, right? Like it just is.
Yes.
You have so many things going on. You've achieved so much already. I can't wait to see what happens in the future. Before we go, everyone needs to know how to get a hold of you, how to follow you, all of those things, which I will link, but you should tell them.
That's you, Jay.
Thanks, Rob. So the podcast is called Could Be Better Podcast, and it's available wherever different podcasts are found. We have a website that's couldbebetterpodcast.com. People can email us, couldbebetterpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, not so much, but we do have an Instagram account that's much more active, where we tag everybody from the magazine. couldbebetterpodcast.com.
Perfect. I love that. Well, everyone's going to be following you, I know, and everyone's going to love the show because it is honestly so funny.
Thank you.
It really is. So I just again want to say thank you guys both for at least coming and just chatting. If we were together normally and we weren't in quarantine, literally you'd just be sitting on this couch with me. And so really it's just like hanging out. And we didn't even need alcohol this time. So
no, this is fun. I enjoyed this. It was great.
Good. Well, we'll have to come back. I definitely will let you know next time we're on the East Coast. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you guys, everybody, for watching and tuning in. We will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.